Hey everybody, thank you for joining me today, Ross Marcagiani, and another great conversation at revowell.com. Today we're going to be talking about estrogen dominance. So basically we're going to talk about what estrogen dominance entails and how estrogen dominance can influence a female cycle. And then we're going to talk about how we can treat estrogen dominance and get that female cyclic rhythm normal and regulated. So I hope you're ready to dive in. Let's get started. So first, before we get into estrogen dominance, I think it's really important that we talk about the female cycle and we talk about hormones. So hormones are super important. They're important for regulation of cells and tissue. It's important for the immune system. They're important for just making sure we're healthy and that the body is doing what it's supposed to do. Hormones are super important for helping us deal with stress, and they're super important to modulate and keep other processes in the body running correctly and running smoothly. So I kind of like to think of hormones as like the conductor on the train. They're there to just make sure everything's running correctly and that everything should be doing their job and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So when we talk about our hormones, men are a little bit easier. We have this foghorn, so to speak. So it's this steady constant noise, steady stream noise of testosterone. It doesn't really fluctuate too much, and it's just a steady stream. When we talk about females have this symphony of hormones. So they have ebbs and flows and alterations in two really key hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen is what I like to call the growth hormone. So it helps the cells to get bigger and get larger. Progesterone is more of, helps the body to grow up. So meaning it tells cells how to differentiate and it tells cells how to mature. So these are really important two hormones when we're talking about the female cycle. So when we're looking at the female cycle, we have three phases here. We have our bleeding phase, we have our follicular phase or the follicle phase, and then we have our luteal phase. So these are all really important. So in the bleeding phase, what happens here is we're going to have this drop in estrogen and progesterone. This is the start of the female cycle. Typically, the female cycle should be around 28 days, plus or minus a day. If you're going, any alterations of that, there's definitely an imbalance in that hormone rhythm. So that's obviously something that you probably want to look at if you're not, plus or minus 2 days in that 28-day cycle. But so we have the start of the cycle, we drop in estrogen and progesterone, and we have the bleeding phase due to that drop in estrogen and progesterone. Then we have two brain hormones that are really important. One's called FSH, which is follicular stimulating hormone, and then LH, which is luteinizing hormone. So the brain will tell to release follicle stimulating hormone. The follicle stimulating hormone is going to cause this increase in estrogen. This increase in estrogen is going to peak around day 14. So during that follicular phase, the follicle is growing and growing and growing, and then we hit that day 14 and we have what's called ovulation. We have that rupture of the follicle due to the second brain hormone, that luteinizing hormone. Now we've released that luteinizing hormone, the estrogen now drops, and now the luteinizing hormone tells the body to release progesterone. Progesterone will be released from the corpus luteum, which is the remnants of the follicle that ruptured. And then progesterone is going to peak around that 20 to 23 day, and then it's going to drop off, and 28 day will be the end of our cycle. So to recap that really quick, we've got our two brain hormones, FSH, LH. So FSH is going to be signaled by the brain. It's going to increase estrogen. Then it's going to drop off around day 14 due to luteinizing hormone. And then luteinizing hormone is going to increase progesterone. Progesterone is going to drop off at day 20 to 23, and then all the hormones drop off together. So that being said, that's the key important point about the female cycle. So when we have some issues here that we could be running into. We could have a distribution issue. So that being said, that we could have this alteration in this symphony. And if we have, say we have a nice steady inclination of progesterone, and all of a sudden the progesterone drops out, that could be the difference between, a miscarriage and having a baby. That could be causing all these PMS symptoms. So real quick, before I jump to the rest of the issues, let's talk about what might be some common symptoms that you might having that may lead to wondering if you're having a imbalance of these hormones. So typically what women will be noticing is that we have excessive PMS symptoms. They're going to have breast tenderness, excessive menstruation, weight gains or trouble losing weight. They're going to have migraines, back pain, water retention, excessive cramps. So those are the big ones when it comes to PMS symptoms. So let's get back to our issues here. So again, we have that distribution. So maybe the progesterone just drops off just for a day or two, or during this estrogen, maybe day 13, the estrogen just drops off a little bit that causes those PMS-like symptoms that I just explained. So that could be an issue. Next, we could have a production issue. So maybe we're not just producing enough estrogen or progesterone. Typically, through that 28-day cycle, you want to see anywhere between 30 and 50 picograms per milliliter of estrogen. And then progesterone, we want to see during that 28-day cycle, 1,600 to 1,800 picograms per milliliter of progesterone. So if we're not reaching those numbers, those could create those symptoms that I just discussed. And then we could have a timing issue. So maybe instead of getting that getting that ovulation at day 14, maybe it's not even happening. Or maybe it's happening, day 5 or 6. So the cycle is getting completely screwed up. Or progesterone, maybe we're not having that increase at day 20 and 23. Maybe it's happening much later. Maybe it's happening much earlier. Maybe it's not happening at all. So looking at the timing. And then the big one here that we're talking about that's going to lead to estrogen dominance is our estrogen, that's the E, to progesterone P ratio. So typically during that 28-day cycle, throughout that cycle, we're going to have at least a 25 all the way up to 300 more progesterone than estrogen. So progesterone is going to be higher. And the reason why for that is because we want progesterone to be high because we want to, we're here put on earth to reproduce. And hence progesterone, progestation. So it's going to influence childbirth. So that's why we're going to have that higher rate of progesterone. So when we drop that ratio from anywhere from 25 to 1 or 300 to 1, it's going to cause, again, these PMS-like symptoms, and it can cause, what I just discussed, the breast tenderness, the excessive bleeding, and so forth. So we want to make sure we have a good estrogen to progesterone ratio, or else we could be getting some serious issues. So what might throw off that estrogen to progesterone ratio are going to be environmental factors. So having cosmetics, having hair products, having sanitary cleansing agents that are estrogen dominant, that are high in estrogens. So we're going to jack up the estrogen ratio while keeping that progesterone ratio the same, and the ratio is just not going to be at a good ratio that the body wants to be able to function correctly. And the big one here is the oral contraceptive pills. So basically what's going on here is these oral contraceptive pills are going to increase our estrogen ratio anywhere from 4 to 5 times more estrogen in the body. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're going to now have, instead of this increase and then drop in estrogen, we're going to just have a steady state increased estrogen that's just going to keep going and going and going. We're going to have that steady state, and the estrogen level is never going to drop. Therefore, it's never going to signal to the body to increase progesterone. So progesterone is never going to get elevated, and estrogen is going to stay at that steady state. And then it's going to also tell that brain with those brain hormones that we talked about that communicate from the hypothalamus to the pituitary, the HPA axis, they're not going to be able to communicate to each other, and it's basically going to shut down. And therefore, we're not going to bleed, we're not going to slough off the endometrium. So that's what the oral contraceptive pills are doing. And in research, and what we found is that these oral contraceptive pills are estrogen dominant or estrogenic in nature. So they can cause uterine fibroids, they can cause endometriosis, they can cause fibrocystic breast or breast tumors, they can cause polycystic ovarian syndrome. So these are issues that are coming up with females who are estrogen dominant or have that ratio altered. We can have a decrease in selenium, zinc, and tyrosine, which are crucial elements for the thyroid. And the thyroid is basically what keeps our metabolism in check. It helps us, to gain weight, lose weight, rev up the metabolism if we need to decrease weight, slow the metabolism down if we need more adipose tissue or more energy. So now that thyroid can't run correctly, and now we're affecting another body system. We can have decreased B vitamins. So now we're going to lead to anemia. So B vitamins are crucial for, taking heme and containing iron and attaching oxygen and delivering oxygen to tissues. Now we're not able to do that. Now we have a decrease in DHEA, which is crucial for our autoimmunity. So now we have more trouble fighting off infection or fighting off bacteria and other viruses. Also, it's been shown to increase chances of osteoporosis. We've also seen that estrogen alter the microbiome in the stomach. So now we have more dysbiosis, more increased bad bacteria. So now we're susceptible to not adequately digest food correctly. And then we get malnutrition and we get SIBO and other increased autoimmune disorders. So as you can tell, this can, estrogen dominance and this shift of estrogen and progesterone ratio can be a harmful thing. And basically what we're going to do, like anything else, find yourself a good functional medical practitioner, and we're going to assess, not guess. So we'll do at BioHealth like a 201, and we're going to look at the 30-day cyclic rhythm, and that's going to involve a saliva testing. And we're going to just look at that cyclic rhythm and look and see what your ratio of estrogen and progesterone are, and we can track and see if your estrogen's peaking at day 14, see if progesterone's peaking at day 20 to 23. So we get to look at and get a peek inside what your rhythm is going on. Is it altered? Is there a distribution issue? Is there a production timing issue? Is the estrogen to progesterone ratio off? So we get a nice picture of what's going on. So if you have these symptoms that I've talked about, or you think you might, be having these altered ratios of estrogen and progesterone, this is something that you might want to look into and find a good functional medical practitioner. So I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it really opened up your eyes to oral contraceptive pills and other environmental estrogen toxicities. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you know anyone that would benefit from this conversation, please share this information. Because like I always say, we're in this together to become healthier and happier. Thank you and have a great day.